my name is Alma Ramirez, and today I'm going to be speaking to you guys about problems and solutions of inner cities. The reason that I chose this topic was because I believe that a shared belief, something that we can all agree on, is that we want to set up our children to succeed because after all, they are our future. So it was startling to me to hear that the U.S. Census Bureau reported that children who lived in inner cities are twice as likely to be living in poverty than those who populate suburban areas. On top of that, nationwide studies have shown that graduation rates of the nation's 50 largest cities to be only 53% in inner cities, whereas it is 71% in wealthier areas. This is startling to me, and it urged me to do my research so that I can present in front of you guys today what exactly is contributing to these large gaps. Well, inner cities do face a lot of problems such as high crime rates, poverty. They lack basic resources such as transportation, healthcare, overcrowded schools. When you take into consideration all of these factors, it becomes very difficult for anybody to be able to uplift and to prosper out of these settings. When you're solely focused on survival, it becomes hard to focus on anything other than day-to-day life, struggling to meet basic needs. As a nation, we have to make more efforts. We have to make it a priority to uplift these communities. We need to rebuild these communities if we want to give our children the chances to succeed in life. And numbers do not lie. We have the statistics in front of us. So how can we as a society turn a blind eye to rebuilding these communities? Today, I'm going to present with you facts that show how rebuilding these communities are going to not only benefit them and the people in it, but nation as a whole. With these numbers affecting such a large portion of the nation, how can we continue to turn a blind eye to these issues? It affects such a large population that chances are that you may know somebody who is struggling to provide their children with the basic needs that every parent wishes to provide them with. Every child deserves to be given the tools to succeed. The first issue that I would like to discuss today is school environments. One major problem in the school environment is the poor distribution of the budget. In the U.S., more than half of the poorest districts do not receive adequate funding to provide children with the needs. School districts with the highest rates of poverty receive about $1,000 less than their counterparts in wealthier cities. And keep in mind, this is taking into consideration both state and local fundings. I'm going to show you a graph that shows the large gap in how our funding is being distributed. And this is going to show state and local revenues between districts serving the most and the fewest children in poverty. As you can see, the green represents more progressive states and the red represents regressive states, and then everything in between. And this is in every state in the United States. The problem with not providing these schools with proper funding is it creates further issues. So now you're looking at overcrowded classrooms, not enough staff. If there's not enough teachers to teach these classrooms, what happens is now you have a class of 40, 50 students, whereas other classrooms are kept at a minimum 20, 25 students so that teachers can give their students one-on-one. Now they're not being able to be seen in a classroom, to be sat by with the teacher and to have one-on-one time. Other problems is they don't have school supplies. A lot of teachers are responsible for paying out of pocket for this, and if they're not being paid wages, then they can't provide this to their students either. And now we're looking at students who are being taught with outdated textbooks or not being given technology or school supplies, pencils. This is just basic needs that we're not providing to our children. Another issue is public resources, lack of public resources. For example, in inner cities make up 15 to 20% of the US population. That's 15 to 20% of our population who is struggling to reach basic health care, to access health care. Now, many people might say that I'm going off on a reach here and that there is no correlation to access of health care with the success of the population in inner cities. However, there are studies that show that preventative care is important to keep rates of illnesses down. So if the adults in a household are stressing about receiving health care for whatever illnesses, or they're not making enough money to be able to purchase medicine or what have you, now the stress is going on to the children, and rather than focusing on purely thriving in their education, now they're having to drop out of school to get jobs to help provide for the household. And this starts within the household. We have to give the people basic health care. Another public resource example that I can use is lack of transportation. Transportation is going to contribute to economic development, health, quality of life, everything. In one survey done, it shows that inner cities, 34% of people in inner cities rely on transportation. They rely on public transport to get to work or get to school. And if they have a long commute and there's not enough public transit, then how can they get to their jobs? If there's no jobs in the community, and that forces them to have to go outside of their community, and they can't get to those because there's no transit. It all starts within the community. By taking into consideration giving these communities resources, we have to provide these communities with resources that we in suburban areas might take for granted. You have to take into consideration these things. All of these things are factors that determine how successful you can be. So that concludes my presentation, and I hope that these are issues that we as a society will be able to address.